Hello, space fans, and welcome to The Virtual Word. I'm Leonard. I'm a filmmaker and a director who specializes in immersive worlds and movies about them for over 30 years.
And I'm Larry Rosenthal, a designer and creator of 3D interactive worlds for also over 30 years. Welcome to our second show.
Yeah, this is now finally the second show. Larry, we got the first one. Now we're finally back recording the second one. So
production.
It's been a journey.
Yes.
It's been a journey, people. Trust me. We'll talk to you about what it means to record a podcast in WebXR. Oh boy, the wonderful emerging world of virtual reality.
We're breaking boundaries here.
That's right, exactly. So listen, on our first show, the virtual word was, I believe, was COVID for a lot of different reasons. I've got to say that the virtual word on this show should be NFTs. Now, I know that's not one word, but we'll just condense it into that, meaning non-fungible tokens. Larry, this whole area is very confusing for people that are already confused by cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and the like. And we've got a whole new era of value being given to the, virtual world, not the virtual word, the virtual world that's happening. And this is something I've been talking about for a very long time. The idea that virtual reality, really the best metaphor for it is virtual real estate. We're creating value in a digital twin of the, of the real world. And suddenly, because a couple billionaires have jumped in recently, namely Elon Musk and Mark Cuban and a few others, to verify this idea of NFTs, non-fungible tokens. First, what the hell does fungible mean?
Well, it's funny. We're saying, we're using those terms new again, where things really aren't always new. And what's very strange is that, while others may be the fathers of VR and the godfathers and grandmas, when it comes to this idea of virtual collectibles, I guess that's truly my hat. What's happened now is that, the intangible, the virtual, is now seen as value, which of course it's been value for a long time. But what's interesting it's not just real estate, which I'll get to in a second, because let me just tell us a quick story here. I'm going to take us back.
First of all, I want to say, just for people to understand, Larry, you are absolutely someone who's been working and slaving in the salt mines of virtual value and virtual objects and all of that ever since I've known you. And, it going way, way back. So the funny thing about these NFTs and this sort of hype around it for both you and I is that, in different ways, we've been involved with the discussion and the execution of these kinds of things for a very long time. And now suddenly it's the trendy thing.
Yeah. I'm going to take us on a little journey
about the trendy
here.
Thing from your old dog perspective, because you've definitely been in that NFT salt mine for a long time.
Right. It's a funny story. It's an interesting story, and it goes back literally to 1994. So back in 1994, I was obviously at that point in time, it was a little bit after the first little VR bubble. I'm doing CD-ROMs and interactive because that's the thing of the moment and the thing that pays the bills. But also AOL has kicked in, and there's online communities, and there are, for the first time also, places, graphic artists communities posting images and things. So at that point, Star Trek Voyager was announced, the new show. And so everybody was interested in what the new Voyager ship would look like. And I come from an industrial design background, so, growing up, as a car guy, you used to look at all these Mark Sterenberger illustrations, marker concepts.
Larry, does that mean you were a guy with, glue and model kits and those kinds of things?
All that stuff. I've actually posted some of that. I actually found the portfolio and posted some of those 40-year-old high school images of model kits and fake matte paintings on Twitter this week.
Wow.
As my portfolio is being now reinvented for NFTs. But so, yes, I mean, as we discussed, we're both Star Trek and Star Wars kids in a sense, or teenagers. And so by the time 94 is rolling around, Voyager's coming out, and the ship is, being designed somewhere in the back lots of, Viacom and Paramount. And
Yeah.
so I take it on myself. You're hearing rumors of what it might look like. Oh, it's got a triangular hull, and the ship engines are smaller, and just rumors throughout the gossip on text-only internet. So basically, as I said, like the Car and Driver, Road and Track would have concept illustrations of what, let's say, the new Corvette would look like underneath all the cardboard that was usually glued around cars as they were tested in Dearborn. So I did that for the Voyager, and I created these illustrations. I kind of had the 3D parts and pieces from things I was doing, and I put them online. And they became, in a sense, kind of the first viral graphic images sensation, on AOL, or the burgeoning internet of the early 90s. And there were thousands of downloads, taken. And what then happened is I started getting hundreds of emails, messages from Star Trek fans. Back then,
What a surprise.
they were groups of people who would meet, let's say after school or one Wednesday a night. They'd have like their own little club with their own imaginary ship and fleet, and sometimes they'd cosplay, but this is the early 90s. And they would do, maybe they play board games, that kind of thing. So they all wanted their own ship. They said, "Can you design a ship for our club? We're the USS Constitution Club out of Indiana. Can you make a ship for us? We wanted to have this and that and be red and blue and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, they were consumers looking for something, but of course they weren't going to be able to pay professional prices for a designer to spend time doing something like that. So I came up with this idea, basically, of a Starship construction site, or CD-ROM at that point, and I named it Starbase C3, basically modeled after Area 51, a place where you experiment with spacecraft or aircraft. And I made a Lego type system of Lego parts, 150 different 3D parts that were all designed to be able to be attached together in 3D programs, and you could design your own ship. And that way, I figured they can do the work, and I could just sell the models as a game kind of thing, or as a toolkit. So that's where it started. And I was trying to make a CD-ROM, but all the tool makers didn't want to make games. They wanted to make tools, which is, of course, the opposite.
By the way, for those younger listeners and viewers, CD-ROM is a very strange medium that once existed long, long ago in a far, far world away. And
tell us about it.
It had a lot of limitations, but it was amazing. It was an amazing moment of where, wow, we can do content that has interactivity of some level. And CD-ROMs was the medium that a lot of artists like David Bowie produced special CD-ROMs. A lot of very innovative people use CD-ROMs as kind of an interim bridge to some of the things we're doing now. And it was a very limiting medium, that's for sure. But there were some amazing, CD-ROMs out there,
And the key was it became a distribution medium, because what happened is they started to be put CD-ROMs up against like VHS tapes in Walmart, and the game counters started. In other words, putting CD software up among VHS sections in Walmart and Kmart. So that was the original goal, was a CD-ROM. So, but then the web was hitting. Within a year, the World Wide Web hit, 1995. And I said, what do I need a CD-ROM for? Let me distribute everything online directly. So at that point, we put up a website. We had the model kits. And I decided, I'll sell you a simple ship for like $5. You could buy 6 of them for $30.
And this is just to make it clear, these are digital versions of these.
Absolutely.
Now, right?
There's nothing here but a wireframe and texture maps and JPEGs.
Right.
And so what I ended up doing was writing a contract. Also, the other thing that I kind of came across was the idea, well, I can put this out into the digital world. Now people are going to copy it. Or people are going to make alterations. That's the whole idea. It's like Lego, mix and match.
Right.
But what I should do is tell them to send us back what they make, and then we'll put it into the library and sell it as well and take a cut. So we were creating a system of licensing that I called the C3 contract. It was under Cube 3, CCC. Today, people will hear of Creative Commons, which is kind of, in my opinion, kind of a bastardization of it. But the bottom line is that contract coupled with the models, and then I contacted a company that was making a wallet called Cybercoin.
Right.
Okay. Which
and this is in 95, right?
95, going into 96.
See, and again, kiddies out there. Sorry, I'm trying not to be patronizing.
Ooh.
But sometimes I am. Anyway, all this stuff has a much deeper, longer history than a lot of people that, especially younger people, would think. Because there's, suddenly it becomes the hot thing, and it's like, oh, this is this new innovative concept. No, these things have been around for quite a while, and actually there's been a lot of attempts at it, sort of peaks and valleys and plateaus, and now we're in a moment where, because of all the convergence of all these things that we talked about in our first episode, we're in this moment where suddenly, since that last episode was done literally just a week ago, the virtual world is full of value that it didn't have before.
That's right. And that's the exciting part, is that the concept now is, I was creating a virtual world to tell stories in with objects that you would buy, like action figure play sets. And that was what MacWeek called it. There was an article in MacWeek, and they understood what I was doing was creating like virtual play sets and action figures that didn't exist, that could be collected and traded, and then you could get together and create stories. That didn't exist
except in the virtual world. It didn't exist except
online, within renderings, within written stories, and then using them as avatars and fly around vehicles inside of early 3D engines. Early Quake.
So here's my
engines.
question: back there at those price points, did you ever make any money on any of that?
I did, and then we'll get to the second part of the story quickly, where I was making much more money. So I did make money. What I did is also I got a deal. AOL came to me, America Online, who at that point was building the first $30 million big studio out in LA called the Entertainment Asylum, and said, "We don't know what exactly you're doing, but we like it. So come here, help us build this network and design it, and we'll give you a deal, put your content on, and we'll figure out something, advertising, whatever, So I came out, we did it. I literally, for that summer, for 3 times, it was, "You've got mail," and on one of those 3 buttons was, "Come visit Starbase C3." And as a small company myself, basically at that point, I had to broker a deal between AOL, Silicon Graphics, and Black Sun Technologies, because they had the multi-user, as we talked about last time, plugins. Multi-user plugin so that people could fly spaceships together was Black Sun. SGI had the Cosmo Player, which allowed you to view it in 3D and assemble it in 3D, And then AOL had the Flash interface I built, where I was actually the first person also to take PayPal and Cybercoin and embed their Buy Me Now buttons into Flash so that it would trigger a sale and ring outside, onto the internet, and and your wallet would get money in it, or your PayPal account would be triggered, and you'd have cash in you. So what happened is I raised the price point a little bit. I made some money, but the advertising was nothing, and there's a whole story in there from AOL, but we'll talk. That's another story that when we write the book.
The horrible AOL history in the entertainment industry.
But it was obvious that I wasn't going to get rich, so I ended up moving up to Northern California to at first do a Star Trek game, and then turned to Dungeons and Dragons. And of course, at that point, what was interesting is that the game industry had began to start to adopt using in-world coinage as well. Even, it was before data mining like World of Warcraft, object value, but it was coming very quickly. So in those intervening years, call it 2000 to 2003, the game industry began to understand there was a value for items in games, and they could be sold in an outside market. By 2006, Second Life came, They originally had no economy, as we talked about. They actually came and because for years I used to see the guys from Second Life at the shows and say, "Look, guys, I'll take Starbase and invade. I have something to sell, but I'm here to get not you just rich, but I got to make some money." So eventually they put an economy in. I brought the Starbase vehicles into Second Life and began to build the world out there. And literally, I started making thousands of dollars a month. And I used it to prototype, which turned out to be about a $4.5 million deal that would have, come down to LA for a larger studio, but the economy had died by 2009. The whole thing fell apart. But so I did make money and energy from the beginnings of that. Second Life, which a lot of people will know of who are listening to us here, was really that first prototype of value in virtual worlds. And of course, in the last couple of weeks now, and we can talk about Somnium Space. I just had an interesting conversation with people there in the last 24 hours because they're now tied into Ethereum and the blockchain. So this next phase of virtual worlds will all be about getting that value out of the objects that creators are making in those virtual worlds. And that's so exciting from everything we've talked about, right, Brett? I mean, it's great.
Exactly. I mean, it's like we're in a moment where just this thing that's been this etheric, almost mystical idea suddenly has teeth. And the idea that now we can create a business model, a value model, which also includes a scarcity model, by the way, which we should talk about that because obviously, the thing that is true in the virtual world and in digital, objects and in the digital marketplace is that you can't have everything just copied a billion times. It loses all value. You have to create some kind of scarcity. So there has to be verified provenance on certain things. So there's things, like in the fine art world, which by the way, the fine art world is jumping into this NFT thing, feet first right now. And, if you look at the, artists like Jeff Koons and people that create perceptual value, immense perceptual value around a kind of, pop art innovation, this is an example of that happening right now. And it's
incredible.
It's an amazing moment. I'm excited as hell. I've been out there giving keynotes about this for years and years and saying, look, there's going to be value. Obviously, gamers get this. There's a $50 billion, microtransactional game object, or how I don't know how you label it, a marketplace, and it's a tremendously huge marketplace, way bigger than feature films, just for microtransactions, for cloaks and special powers, et cetera, in game worlds.
And that's what the audience needs to know is that for over a decade, now. Again, that's the scarce because all these games were built by developers for publishers with a certain specific engine and coding wrapper around them, so that the golden sword in World of Warcraft only would have its value in World of Warcraft. In any place else, it had no real no body, no energy, no existence. So that if they only make one golden sword. That's the scarcity,
exactly,
and that's what players will play and pay for.
And I think what people need to understand is it's now not just happening in the gaming world; it's happening with objects just from any number of aspects of human life. Any kind of artwork, photos, even sounds. I mean,
also contracts.
We're going to be able to populate a virtual world with a lot of new. Virtual value, which sounds like, well, is it really valuable at all? It actually is, because if you really look at what the abstraction of money is to begin with, it's all a perceptual value that we're been working on, especially since Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1976.
Right. Exactly.
So so we're in a perceptual value world, and so we're just now with the digital twin in the virtual world, this version of the planet that we're now going to be interacting in. Of course, it's going to have value there because we're going to be humans interacting with it, and we're deciding to give it value. Now, the fact that Elon Musk and Mark Cuban decided to give it value, that means a lot more than just you and me right now.
Right.
And so that's why this idea of, NFTs are non-fungible tokens. So let's talk about the non-fungible part.
Right.
Because cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is a fungible token.
Right.
And, it means it's, you can trade it for itself. You can, transfer it to fiat. It has, a value, an abstract value just unto itself as a coin. Whereas these objects are actual objects that have value, like you would have a piece of art on your wall.
Right.
And that's a non-fungible piece of value. So
Right.
it's a weird word, fungible. So,
the best I can, that I've been getting from, you talk to different people, they're all trying to define what all this means right now. There's only, everybody's 5 minutes ahead of somebody else, and that's about how it works, right? But the fact that, what happens are the data that you put into, that you upload onto a marketplace, be it a JPEG, be it a GLB file, be it a promissory note, a contract in a sense, almost like you'll do. Those things basically they get tagged with a number that creates the contract in a sense in the blockchain, right?
So let's talk about that, because what we're talking about is this value is based around smart contracts in the blockchain. The blockchain allows smart contracts. Now, we don't want to get into a primer course on blockchain and smart contracts, so look it up. But but it's very much something that's going to be affecting your lives soon. So I would suggest diving in.
The best part of the smart contract is that you can split where the money goes for creative.
Yes, exactly.
That's the real key.
It takes out all of these, horrible things like handlers and agents, and
all the
lawyers
middlemen.
and humans, because that's why, it's called a trustless network, meaning you don't need trust when there are humans in there, because the algorithm and the encryption on the algorithm, which is unhackable. Look, for me, there's how much Bitcoin value out there right now? It's a huge number.
Right.
It hasn't been hacked yet. So if it could be hacked, it sure as hell would have been hacked.
Well, the interesting thing is I was talking to a collector of NFT art today, and he's saying, within 5 years, maybe some of these issues will come up that we're talking about now. And I go, I think within 18 months, the case law is going to start to be made, because now that you have Christie's auctions, $6 million, $600,000, Topps Publishing doing these the NBA cards. These are real publishers, real businesses, real corporations. So that the concept of real money going for a real service of some sort or promise, so that the case law will start to get made. Hopefully it'll follow, at least, again, after 2020, we don't know what the hell anything is anymore in this country after the last 4 years. Well, but hopefully it'll follow the old standards of case law, of legal tenant, of how transact.
Right now, though, I was talking with a lawyer, a securities lawyer, corporate lawyer today about this. There are no SEC regulations on non-fungible tokens. They're not a security. Right now. But, as the activity gets greater and greater and the value gets higher and higher, I bet those boys are going to be jumping in at some point, and trying to define things. And that's going to be the moment where we have to revolt, everybody. We've got to maintain our value in the virtual world without these old school fiat mofos screwing it up for us.
We have to kill the ability for the middleman to screw it up.
Yes.
But we have to keep the law. We have to keep the common law.
Yes, exactly.
When you make a deal, even if it doesn't, when you sign a contract, it's your word.
Yeah, but here's the great thing: when all this is being managed on the blockchain, it's a trustless network. It is smart contracts, and it will be managed in the law because of that. See, so it's I think that we're going to have a greater efficiency around this kind of value in the virtual world than we've ever had in the real world, because of the blockchain.
Well, I'll tell you,
as an invention.
And now to get a little darker, but all of a sudden I see Gort from the day the earth stood still, standing there judging the contracts. No, yes, No. Yes.
Right. Well,
Because
I
the
mean,
AI.
that would be an intervening AI. That would be the
That's
thing about
right.
a smart contract is nothing can intervene. It's absolutely just algorithmical. It's not there's no interpretation going on. And that's the thing. Look, the whole world of middlemen with value, whether it be art gallery owners and brokers of this and that value, or agents and lawyers and managers in the entertainment business, which I've been dealing with, oh my God, all my life. Anyway,
Tell me about it.
That aspect of things, which it can't happen to a nicer group of people, is going to go away.
I think hopefully
very
most
happy about
goes
that.
away. Yeah, I come down where, again, you think about it. I mean, look, the law is the law, but the law can be an ass. I mean, you always want to have that one judge. When you're the guy who's going to get the electric chair, you want to hope that the judge, at that moment, sees the bigger picture of maybe that you were innocent, not really guilty, even though you were there and you held the gun or something.
And now
along
you're
those
bringing
lines.
up the dark side of smart contracts, which is
That's
that
right.
they are intractable, inhuman. Essentially, they're inhuman, right?
That's why I brought up
the human mess of the judicial system, which sometimes can, flip the right way. Unfortunately, not as much as it happens in the movies. Folks.
Well, that is the issue.
It usually goes the wrong way.
Well,
that's
yes.
just my experience.
Yeah, well, stupid is eternal. That's how I look at it. So, stupid decisions are eternal. So, and the law, of course, like any other, discipline, is going to have a lot of stupid in it. And of course,
yeah,
it's
and
hurt a lot
look,
of
the
people.
whole idea of lawyers and mediating the law, although a very necessary thing, is essentially a middleman functionality. It's middlemen, and so as we get into a virtual world, which is managed more in trustless networks, managed on the blockchain with smart contracts, and hopefully managed by eventually AI that is reflecting, again, the better angels of our nature, which is one of the things I'm always talking about with AI. I think that we actually could make the virtual world a better place for human interaction than the real world right now. Not to that we want to, substitute it, but certain aspects of human interaction and life and transactional reality can happen in the virtual world much more efficiently than it can happen in the real. Now, of course, that's already happening. I mean,
it's like
credit
autopilot.
cards it's already, there's many antecedents to this, but we're now getting to where every single thing in a virtual world, let's say, I call them VX, virtual experience story worlds. That's a story world where you're entering into a James Bond world. Let's use that as a metaphor here.
Right.
We don't have those rights, by the way, people, but God, we wish we did. But anyway, if we're in that and you're in Monaco and you're at a casino and James Bond is a player character and they're actually a player character that's an AI. And you are essentially able to have a fly on the wall viewpoint of what's going on, or you could become one of the waiters and you could actually interact with some of the other players. Every single thing in that virtual story world that's being curated by the ideas and tropes of a James Bond film will have value. And if you can do certain things and interact with those objects and either win them, or let's say you're at the baccarat table with Bond, and you actually start to win the value of those chips, which are not actually, currency, but they're actually NFTs, non-fungible tokens within that virtual world, would now allow you to have a tremendous aspirational motivation for doing interaction in that virtual story world. So it's a really interesting, it's a really interesting new level of human behavior that's also very, very primal and old in terms of human behavior. So, how we manage this and make it more fair, more, more efficient, that's the challenge of this moment. Again, one of the things you said earlier, Larry, and this is a main theme for me in this podcast in general, which is this stuff is happening way faster than most people understand.
Right.
And there's a lot of people like, oh, this is, 30 years out or 10 years. I'm telling you, this stuff is going to slam into the reality of your daily life much sooner than people think. And I know this is the case. I've said it a lot before about other things. And, it's something that I really feel in my short hairs. This is now coming at us like a freight train.
Absolutely. I mean, and the two issues that one that we talked a little bit about is again the contract and again the AI and because again we already have learned with AI algorithms through social media that the creators are reflected in the software, and that's where you end up with things that racism slips in, all sorts of things slip into
Oh yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
relationship. But we'll jump to the second one now, because again, other artists online, I've seen there's been some chatter online back and forth that I keep intercepting between artists who are excited by what's going on in NFTs and
Yes.
others who are actually cautious and also angered by it because of the environment, the effects on the
Right.
environment.
Right.
Uh,
And that's a big look. This is a big issue with cryptocurrency, with the blockchain in general. With POC, proof of uh, concept, models, and the idea of moving towards proof of stake as a more efficient energy model. That's something we should talk about a little bit.
right.
These are again, in all honesty, even though I can say these words, the deep understanding behind what's going on with the blockchain takes a while, everybody. So give yourself some time,
Right.
study it a bit, because understanding the difference between, those value models is something that it's pretty abstract,
Well, the
and
main thing I think a lot of people need to understand is that very simply, to do all these transactions, it means a computer is whirling away somewhere using
yes,
energy. So
yeah,
imagine, you have you have a million virtual items on a giant ledger, and your
yes,
item's somewhere in the middle. It's like a record player or a tape. You've got to go
yeah,
find it
right,
to record it to go sell it to somebody else, let's say. So that server, those hard drives and that server is using a lot of energy. So what's occurring is even to
yes.
write items and to get them into this virtual state on the blockchain is that now there are all different numbers out there, but the numbers aren't great in terms of the amount of energy that it takes.
No,
It's
it's not. And
actually
and look, the truth is, for the virtual world to actually be fully birthed, it's going to have to coincide with a lot of other efficiencies in other verticals, like energy. It
like
really
green
it's that.
energy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
green energy is. And by the way, this is something that I think is really a great aspect of this. It's forcing these
Yes.
different interdependencies to be considered
Because
in a
people will say,
very fundamental way right up front. And
why is solar important? What do I need from solar in Texas? You say, well,
right,
wait a minute, guy in Texas. You're an art collector. You collect
yeah,
Dallas Cowboy NFT football cards, right?
right,
It
exactly,
takes
exactly.
energy for you to own those 1,000 Dallas Cowboy football cards in NFT. So,
Yep,
and the amount of gas and energy and pollution coming from that, what if we could offset that, you
yeah.
could now have 2,000 cards, you
So
know?
really, again, one of the things that is actually a great joy for me in being involved in this area at all, because the more you know, the less you know, because so many multidisciplines are necessary for the real birthing of the virtual world that is
That's right.
happening, of the digital twin. You can't just do it from a media production perspective, or just a technological hardware perspective, or a coding perspective. All of these things involve every aspect of human reality and need to support it in order for it to actually have efficacy. And it's not going to just happen by itself. And the energy component of this, which, the politically correct thing for us to do is to talk about this. So that's why we are. But the truth is, it's going to be happening no matter what. It is a force of nature. And so those of us that are interested and want to be involved with this, both as creators or just as participants, whatever your perspective is to it, need to keep in the discussion the idea that innovations in these other areas, like green energy, need to go hand in hand with the creation of the virtual world, of the digital twin that we're going to be, involved in and having so much fun in. Because, there's a greater, larger horizon factor here on this, that the idea of greater universal abundance. My friend Dan Mapes, who's the CEO of Versus, and we'll be having him on the show at some point soon, which is a spatial computing company and a very fundamental one that's doing a lot of amazing things out there. We're going from an $80 trillion global economy with the digital twin coming out to an $800 trillion global economy, and that's even conservative. And when you think about that, what it means is the idea of value, the idea of the TAM, total addressable market, the total addressable market, the value of everything in the everything sphere becomes just much greater with the execution of the virtual world, because it's another place to create value, another place to create real estate. And here's the beauty part. There's an infinite amount of beachfront. Now, that brings up the issue of scarcity, because without scarcity in the human context, at least at this point in our evolution, there is no ability to ascertain value.
I don't know if that's true, though, because to me, the story, the art is art. I mean, is a Da Vinci painting, or drawing versus a Michelangelo, sculpture. I mean,
but there's scarcity there because there's only one of those paintings but
not if you're rich enough to own both, right?
Okay, right.
So
but
now you're judging the art.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think that we have to evolve to that understanding of value.
Well, that's
I really
what
do.
Think,
but
that I think is the great advantage.
It's going to be that's going to take a while, and right now, in order to activate and get the value engine pumping in the virtual world, there has to be the ability to create provenance and thus scarcity.
Oh no, well, I think design. I mean, right now Netflix or any of the places that allow a zillion movies to be had, right? Even going back to Blockbuster, so that if you're a movie fan, you can go in for the same nickel or dime and rent whatever movie you wanted, so that the good movie and the bad movie are now equalized only by your fandom or desire for that one movie versus the other.
Very true.
So it's not really scarcity now of resource. It's just you now have the ability for the art, for the creativeness of the artifact to be its main value more than its scarcity.
Oh my God, this is crazy. You're being the utopian right now, and I'm being the dystopian. We flipped roles.
Well, I give us an opportunity to be utopian because I think it's kind of already there in a lot of generations that have grown up with any music you want on Spotify, any movie you want in the theaters. I mean, we grew up, we wanted to see a movie, and it wasn't on television. Until VHS, we had to wait until it came around again. Disney could lock up Bambi for 12 years at a shot.
Right.
They can't do that now. Because they could try, but the technology has created the world where Bambi is always there versus I don't know, pick another cartoon for kids, a Toy Story. But they're both Disney movies. But pick a Warner Brothers movie. I don't care. But the bottom line is now the love of that artifact, of that art, is really where the value will come from. Because let's face it, one person may feel like they're happy to pay $20 to have some sort of memento of Bambi.
Right.
And another one.
So Larry,
only $5.
you're saying basically that love is going to be the value in the virtual world. Here now. Larry Rosenthal, love is the value in the virtual world. End of story, end of podcast, end of series.
It's all you need, Yoko.
I actually, I so hope that's the case, because I think, the true love of experience, the true love of beauty, of art, of creation, even creation one person may think is ugly, another person may think is beautiful. It's all perceptual, of course, and a subjective viewpoint for each person. But that being the value in the virtual world greater than the idea of scarcity is something that could actually pull us out of the primordial ooze that we're in now.
Yes.
Because we're in a bit of a moment of primordial ooze on the planet.
We're in a, that transition point of complete confusion, of angst,
Right,
of
right. Yeah.
ennui.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, it wasn't attempting to wax poetics, but it is true that we have, at least when it comes to the consumption of media, the consumption of what created the fandom generations for the last
Yes.
pop
Yeah.
culture, the last 50 years.
Yeah.
We are now, we have deregulated the control over pop culture, so
Right.
that and now and again, this beginning of the NFT movement is now something which again will allow people to maybe find the right value that they have for something that they want
Yes.
or allow, and it won't be a third party deciding that.
Right.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
yeah.
It
Look at the way this is why some people in the art world are freaked out by this. Look at the way the fine art world works. It works with a very small elitist cabal of people deciding what art
That's
has
right.
value and what art does not. And that's driven every artist mad. It doesn't drive Jeff Koons mad because his art is considered at the top
because
end
he's
of the
one
spectrum.
of the few he's one of the few that's
Exactly.
been highlighted.
Exactly. And more power to him. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of his
Neither
work,
am
actually.
I mean, neither am I.
But I think it's genius, the conception of how he's done it.
Well, look at guys like Marcus Stabi from 15,
Yeah.
20 years ago. Again,
Yeah.
they were, again, it goes back to Warhol and the factory, and then even, as the breaking of that convention of what's pop culture, what's art, and how you manufacturing art.
In a way,
product.
you know what? In a way, I think, Warhol, again, Andy, what a crazy, amazing, prophetic person he was.
Absolutely.
He said everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. I think, no, everyone is going to have objects that are worth 15 million in the virtual world.
To them. And that's the key.
And to them, exactly. But, he, took the Campbell's soup can, a very common everyday object of some of our childhoods anyway. Usually went with a wonderful grilled cheese on Wonder Bread with American cheese slices. And that, that object he made into a piece of pop art that changed the pop art world forever.
Right.
And so that is the moment we're in, that kind of moment. I think it's a very Warholian moment, this NFT thing.
Well, the joke, what I used to do with Andy, when I did Thunk in the 90s, I created a thing called, not the spot, the plug. It was my take on really what eventually became YouTube, which was, it was hosted by the corpse of Andy Warhol. It was a skull and bones with a wig and glasses. And people would dial in 1-900 numbers, because that's what it was back then, and they would plug themselves in their projects. And the tagline was, be famous for 15 nanoseconds.
Well, with Andy, given who Andy was, probably would have been a butt plug. But anyway, I'm sorry. By the way, I did know Andy. I met him. I hung out at the factory when I was very young,
Right.
In New York City, through my friend Philip Hazard, who was part of that whole scene, and a great neon artist, was one of the founders of Let There Be Neon, and so I got to visit New York and touch in with that whole thing at a very young age, and just seeing the abstraction of the scene around the factory, around Andy, and around the idea of value. And, people like Andy created a virtual world around themselves that had its own smart contracts, its own logic.
I've got a great, we're getting to 45 minutes, and a great kind of challenge for the audience to get back to us with.
Yes.
Virtual factories. We now have all the tools we need for people who are creative right now, not just to go to OpenSeas or Rareables or one of these websites to sell their artwork, but to kind of group together with 3D artists and build your own factory-type galleries that can become the hubs for artists.
Look, I'm sure there is a number of people already doing that out there right now, because we are in a gold rush with NFTs. And look, for those of you that don't understand much of what we're talking about, but are fascinated by this area, or else why would you be listening? Dive deeply into it. There's a lot of information out there about it. It is hard to fully conceptualize until you start thinking about just the nature of value with things like the strangeness of paper money and credit cards. It's all an abstract game of perception value. And so when you consider the virtual world being a world that, is completely perceptual and is about, experiencing that from both the group mind perspective and the individual perspective, it makes sense that the idea of value itself would be evolving as the virtual world is birthed on this planet. And so I encourage you to dive into it. We'd love to hear your questions, by the way. Get a hold of us. You can look down lower here and see where we're putting up the ways to contact it, because I really want to help answer some of the questions around this, because it's hard for some people to conceptualize, and there's no shame in that, because the whole blockchain thing, cryptocurrency, all of it, it's really, really new stuff. It's part of the neosphere. And, there are those that are conversant in it and like to just fly the little terms around and, and be cool and hip. But the truth is, it's actually quite simple when you get down to it. It's the same thing as gold having a certain scarcity and being taken out of the ground, mined out of the ground, and then being sold, or being stockpiled so that the scarcity would go up and the value would go up. So, it's something you've got to use a metaphorical mind frame for to really understand, but please, I encourage you to ask the questions. And, this is this whole area of NFTs is one we're going to be going back to again and again, because it really is about the value in the virtual world, in the idea of virtual real estate, and all the things you can put into virtual real estate, all of the accoutrement, all the art, all of the furniture, all of the interactive modalities. I actually think there's a way of gamifying NFTs, and I want to talk about that in one of our future episodes, because I think there's a way of the AI being able to, like, let's say a bunch of people came into a room with different NFTs, different objects in the virtual world. The AI could read those objects and then come up with a meta narrative that joined all those objects together. And it's the kind of game we used to play as children with Tinker Toys and with Lego. It's the same idea, except in a much more powerful, compelling environment in the virtual world.
It'll be the Colonel with the candlestick at the end.
Exactly. As it always is. And that candlestick will have a great value, and as an NFT, I guarantee it.
That's right. So thanks, guys. It's been a great show. We want to thank our producer, Blue Tapali, and our camera guy, Johnny 3D. And as always, again, we want to hear from you.
Thanks, Johnny.
You can subscribe to us at The Virtual Word on YouTube as well as iTunes, and reach out to our Twitter addresses as well. So I will say take care, everybody, and see you next time. And Brett?
Yep. Thanks so much for coming. And look, it's going to get deeper and deeper with each episode, because we're just scratching the surface on some of these things. And we really do want the interaction with you guys out there, because this is about a dialogue, not about a speech. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on The Virtual Word.